Welcome to Data Breakthroughs, the podcast where every episode starts with a mystery. My guest and I walk in blind. No clue what the problem is, no idea about the industry, and definitely not here to spend an hour debating tech stack. Instead, we unwrap a real problem from a real person, figure out what's actually going on, vanish for 15 minutes to think on our own, and then return to see if we can crack it. It is part detective story, part improv challenge, and part let's see what breaks. No scripts, no preps, just curiosity, creativity, and a dash of chaos. Today, my partner in problem solving is the wonderful Arthur. Hi, Arthur.
Hi, Lior. Great to be here.
How you doing?
Yeah, nice. I really like to set up some challenges in the morning and try to go together with you with a cup of coffee.
And maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Arthur Yatsenko. I'm Director of Data Engineering at Urban Sports Club. So I've been there for 3 years. Before that, I worked in Berlin for more than 11 years in the data field. I worked in Zalando Delivery Hero before that. And my focus at the beginning was much more on analytics, sort of product analytics, customer insights. But also what I recently was moving more into engineering space, data engineering, like data science. So now I lead the team at Urban Sports, where I focus on the data platform, product analytics, and the data science function was in my department.
We were working at the same floor at Zalando, basically, back in the days.
Yeah. Those the golden days, the golden era of tech in Berlin. Yeah, I loved it.
And may I ask you, what problems are you solving on the day-to-day? How does your day look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we are solving. We're building some of, internal products, so like data science-based models that we want to integrate for our customers. This is number one. There's a lot of focus on the data science and trying to understand more of the behavioral insights from our users, how we can drive certain engagements and signals. This is quite exciting because we are integrating some recommendation engine as an example, like pretty soon in our app. We can give like good recommendations to workouts and classes to the users. There's a lot of analytical, always insights to uncover as well, so which is always continuous work. And another side is also we're building a data platform, like more compliant data platform solution for the whole organization that is sort of center of excellence for all of the data within the company. And that also comes with its challenges, how to sort of, make it compliant, how to have it ready, available, and how to solve some engineering challenges there as well.
Cool. As you know, the podcast, the idea behind it is that you don't know what is the problem we're going to solve today. Before that, can you guess maybe what is the problem and in what space we're going to be working on?
I think it could be something within data engineering, right? Maybe something around real-time data insights or data quality. To be honest, I'm passionate about both. Let's see if we can crack this down. Is that real-time or data quality? Some governance piece, perhaps.
Interesting. Without any more delays, let me share with you the topic of today. It's in the space of data engineering and infrastructure, and the question is from a product owner. He stayed anonymous. It's an interesting problem. The business wants a simple analytics capability, but my engineering team has been debating architectural choices for 6 months. They are stuck arguing about tools and haven't delivered anything. Is this something you will be comfortable with?
Absolutely. I think that's an interesting problem because it poses a challenge not from the technology perspective, but from people perspective. And this is precisely when you start building engineering teams. How do you kind of come around this sort of blockers? Yeah, I love it. We've been, I think 2022, we started building our data platform, sort of migrating from the old legacy stack. And there was also like wider discussions like what the new stack should be. And generally, I think it took not that much time after all, because we knew that was needed to migrate. But the whole process of the migration and like maintaining, took a lot of time. So we're still wrapping up some of the minor things there.
He was hired to build a data-driven culture. I had full support from the CEO and a clear budget to building a new modern data platform. I'm the product owner and they expected me to present results fast, turning the business. When we're talking about the trigger, 6 months in, we haven't shipped anything. My 2 lead engineers are locked in a statement over architectural strategy. One insists on building a full automated CI/CD driven platform with a pristine long-term foundation. The other wants to move fast and use robust off-the-shelf tools to deliver value now, even if those tools aren't scalable or future-proof. This is the two areas that they're fighting between now. Both perspectives have merit, but no one is willing to compromise, and the rest of the team is paralyzed, waiting for direction. Meanwhile, the business operation without reliable data, critical initiatives are delayed, my CEO is losing patience, and my credibility is at risk. This isn't a resourcing problem, it is a technical strategy conflict that's blocking all delivery and turning the data team into an academic debate club instead of a
Wow.
business partner.
Interesting problem, really.
I like the definition. Intention basically add here, I'm caught between my founding technical leads and increasingly impatient CEO, who wants to see the results promised. My credibility is on the line, understandable, we all been there. This isn't about a lack of founding business need, it is internal technical strategy. So he repeats again here. And he added an extra comment, which was every day spent debating is a day of business operation without data. The delays critical business initiatives and make the data team look like an ineffective academic department. Very strong on the academic department theme here, I see.
Yeah.
How we approach it. So how do we want to define the problem statement?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think like at some point there's also maybe not a lack of innovation, right? But it's a lack of progress that in a way you kind of like want to block. And I think like in a way, like to define that is speed to delivery, right? Is hurting effectively. Like you want to deliver fast, but you don't really have yet particular like plan. That's the challenge, right? There's challenges when you can't deliver because of like resources and blockers within the team, but like, there's at least a plan. But this is a really foundational challenge because if you have multiple teams or like individuals that can't agree on a direction, executive decision has to be made at some point. I think to me this is like maybe even more the speed to deliver, more of even data strategy sort of has to be resolved first, I think.
Before we going into the solution, we need to figure out the problem itself, which is the two conflicting points that there's here. The more robust, structured initiative. The other one is the more just move and learn as fast as possible. And the speed to delivery, this is definitely the issue in here. And we need to basically decide now how we're defining the problem. Is it talking in general, or is it really specifically to evaluate between the two initiatives and which one is working better? Or we just creating some mechanism of how to control it in a better way?
Yeah, I think we can think this from the perspective like what is the outcome this problem is trying to solve, right? The outcome is really to show the business value of the data, right? Right now it's locked. There's no unlocking the potential of the data, right? Because if the core initiatives are not being worked on, I mean, as we see also from the comments, the department is seen as ineffective, right? They don't really see it as they produce value. And as we know from our experience, data is also like one of the hardest departments to put the value on generally, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a buy-in from upper management, I mean, this is extremely great. Some teams, some individuals and leaders start without having that buy-in and having to work their way into and sort of like showing the value of a data team, because it's really hard to put a value. I mean, it's mostly seen as the cost center oftentimes, right? I think to me, it seems right. The core, let's say, problem that we're trying to solve is like how to showcase the value of the data team, right? And this is through, let's say, this particular situation that can be showed rather quickly than.
Agree. I'm with you on this. I think it's also for the product owner, this is main problem. It's like how we showcase basically that what is working on is actually making sense, and that the investment they done and bringing him on board is actually delivering value for the company at the end of the day. I think this is the main challenge that he's facing right now. If we are happy with this clarity statement, it means now that we can go into brainstorming how we're going to address this issue and how we're going to help him basically to understand better how to deal with it. We are back. How was it?
So it was really exciting to brainstorm about. I don't think there's a silver bullet, of course, but it's really good to think about some of the problem space here.
I saw a lot of mouse moving while we were off camera. Maybe would you like to share a little bit on what you have or what
absolutely.
you were thinking about?
I think, we know some things from the problem statement, but we can also try to, raise some assumptions, right? And understand if like we also understand situation fully. First, I think it definitely seems that like there's the blocker, right? Or constraint which is the executive decision is to be taken. And it's not really clear who actually takes this executive decision. Is the product owner who can actually say, hey, I mean, this is what we're building, or there's an engineering leader counterpart that says, okay, no, actually, there's the co-decision process that, maybe this is also the stalemate, definitely lead architects, but who is taking the decision above them, right? And then kind of telling them what to do. I think that's not maybe exactly clear in this particular case. And one, and I'll start with the smaller concern, I think, is that before going into whatever solutions and ideas is the team mature enough to implement the state-of-the-art architecture, right? Also, from my experience, as we also were going through the same exercise, actually building the data platform, we didn't really know everything like since the beginning, right? So we started with something really simple. We build up our knowledge on a lot of different things. So first on infrastructure as the code, or then later event-driven architecture. Sort of how we can also get the data in real time and events and subscribers and everything else. But it was not like since the beginning. Everybody was at a different level of knowledge. They had to build this knowledge throughout the time and feel more, confident. Suggest some solutions, also research a lot more. So that there was a lot of investigation done. I wonder if the team is really mature to just go with that blueprint and run it and then just develop. I think most of the time it's not that easy. Let's have some kind of quick wins, right? As we talked about the architecture and then generally software development, I think the challenges here is it's also a cost, right? And we can put a value to this cost. And one of the idea could be that, the both architectural leads can present their blueprint and the cost projection. You always know, how much the, engineers time, salary, FTE, whatever it costs, right, to develop a certain thing, how much time the infrastructure potentially would also cost to maintain certain workflows. Or in the first example, if you go for, some platform, solution, also know the platform cost, right? So I think it's also could be a good idea to basically have them both really present, the cost breakdown, architectural blueprint, and then if there's the stalemate and actually, the decision, some, let's say, committee or whatever, a person who can take that decision can basically, weigh pros and cons and how much, that approach is going to cost us to build, how much another one, and sort of, making the decision. The simple one as the next one is also you can find the replacement for architecture lead. I mean, seriously, I think not knowing, of course, much of the context, it's sometimes it's challenging to work with people who are not really compromising on things, right? Who really want to get this sort of a vision. And I think you also should be quite frank and clear that, if that problem, I mean, it's not, going to go away. I mean, it is maybe not that fit for that particular person. Really leveraging a lot of sort of that not really abiding authority, not really playing with the team. I think this is also another opportunity you have to consider in order to move. And it's totally okay, I think, to think that way as well. And then on of the value stream, so the quick win is, of course, delivery of the critical data product. So as we formulated the problem statements, we need to bring the value. We need to definitely figure out a way to deliver a critical product. In this case, it could be anything. It could be some critical dashboard that the business is using to show the value of either approach, right? One of those ideas could be that actually you time box, a hackathon. I mean, for two academical adepts of each approach and see what they can deliver in 2 days, right? So try to just time box, spike discussion if there's really not other way to really look into these things and let them code. Let's see what comes out of this. But this is the particularly bringing the value out of the work. So that is my thinking on this one. And maybe just to kind of give a couple of building up on those points as well. I think so. This problem was posted by a product person, right? And the product person understand what is the MVP approach, right? It was the minimum viable product, which is great. And yeah, we all do. And I think we should never forget about this, right? And we also briefly talked that sort of we need to get the customer feedback first. We can't really build shiny things and then not knowing if that's going to get used. Even, let's say you don't build this for the end customer, but you build this for internal customer, your engineering team. After all, I mean, but, you need to get some feedback. You need to get some user validation. Sometimes it doesn't make sense really to build something really more complex if you don't get any user feedback. We need to be customer centric in our software development practices as well. And then basically that is really important. And the last one, I think, so when something fails, I mean, it's good to involve a third party opinion. often to serve because people might be biased to choices or individuals. So I've been having like in a different scale situation, but they were basically looking into some policy changes. So kind of like on like I don't know, data retention and everything else. So there was a lot of like conflicting opinions in the way. So I was trying to get an external, expert from a different like portfolio company who could tell us, I mean, actually, what you're defining here is totally correct, right? And often when people hear, opinion from a different party, well, like, oh, okay, I mean, they have the expertise, I can trust their judgments as well. Even if you're saying the same things all over again, if you hire a consultant and they're going to bring the same blueprint that you have developed, but then you pay, a lot of money for that. I mean, like, this is going to say, these guys knows what they know, whatever. So let's go with this. And so often it's a bias, right? So we're working with people, we're working with bias, and we need to eradicate that bias. Yeah. So that's my thinking around the problem.
It's interesting because it was looking like a very technical problem, but it's actually people problem, right? It's how to navigate a situation where these two conflicts and make the right decision. And I really love this approach, and I will soon show also mine. And I think we both went more or less in the same direction. Would you like also to discuss the architecture that you have added in here as well?
Yes, I can briefly go into that. Well, I'm speaking also for some of my experience, right? Because as I mentioned, we've been building the data platform since 2022. We did like a big migration from our old system that was not really supporting a lot of emerging use cases. And there's also a lot of understanding from the management and the buy-in that we have to build something different, right? We did like some blueprint. I mean, we had some external also support back in the day when they kind of give a blueprint of the things. Of course, we didn't like follow that to the dot, but I mean, it was sort of validating like which we already knew, right? This is like the way that has to be done, and like it was a lot of it was a lot of testing. Even like if we use particular tooling, I mean, like even the way how you deploy that and maintain, within the ecosystem of a cloud was like different. You can do it like different approaches and like a scalability and everything else. As the beginning, like we started like with some vendor integration ingestion, right? So we didn't really build our own APIs. The previous approach was from previous team that kind of got merged into my team was like, okay, we want to have complete control of this like data, right? If you're like maybe in a highly regulated environment, I mean like something that you want, but the platforms, I mean, quite compliant and offer like a good value for the money to get whatever data from your database to your data warehouse, right? So we said, okay, like for now, we're gonna just use like 1, 2, 3 different platforms. Whatever depends on the connectors and such. Did some evaluation. That was easier, right? Like we don't have to maintain a pipeline. We don't have to connect to the database. We just create some user and granted permissions, and then set up the pipelines in the platform. So that was kind of easy. Then you have the storage. So in the data warehouse, in this case, like that kind of takes the first load of the data. It's not really great or whatever. It's just like as it comes, right? And then transformations, like orchestration happening on top of the data warehouse. So that's mostly like the approach. And then you can either write the data back in the data warehouse, just already modified, or store to another destination, right? So that's pretty simple. And the last one is, of course, that more BI layer for visualization and like data, kind of data insights. So this is how we did it, right, at the beginning. And of course, like later on, we figure out like different ways, how we can, do our infrastructure as the code, how we can regulate like access like with Terraform and like resources provisioning with Terraform and things like that as well. And kind of like the whole CI/CD workflows, the workflows for validation of data, for the data quality, for testing of the models and everything else, right? But it was not really since the day one because it took a lot of learning, it took a lot of reading, so everybody coming to the same level of expertise in sort of like the data engineering field. And there's also multiple facets to the data engineering, right? And then sort of the phase two, I mean, we said, okay, now we have more time, we have more expertise, we have more, ability to do that. Let's build our own custom APIs. We don't need platform anymore. We can completely subset some of this platform things and platform costs. We can connect directly to this database through a different method. I mean, it's more reliable. We can have a control over the data. We can deploy our orchestration differently. Storage maybe could be cheaper. So, let's look into some whatever, floating data into buckets potentially, right? Only then writing after some transformations to the data platform. There's multiple ways you can do it, but once you have already, like end to end, let's say pipeline, I mean, you can understand, right, with your architectural leads where you can optimize. and like take one component at a time, right? And there is multiple things and multiple pieces, let's say, in the setup, right? But like you can take that out, optimize, refactor, think what could be done best, like develop more checks and kind of integrations and everything else. And I like that, gradation, like that sort of step-by-step approach. Really, that helps us build that expertise and then like testing out some things as well, because we also don't want to lose the spirit of innovation, right? So which is also really important within the team.
And let me ask you this. So when you design this, when you approached it to begin with, when you started all this process, what was the mindset of the teams? Where were they in achieving the goal? Were they understanding the value of it, or they needed to learn it?
Yeah. So I mean, it was an interesting setup because so first, like there was multiple merging of the teams. There like one original team that was working on sort of the migration of this like new data platform, mostly consisting of the contractors that would let go, which was left with one full-time employee, and then like two more engineers that came from a different business unit in a different entity, so to say, that are like built their data warehouse, but like slightly different in a different business area. So it was a bit of a mix, right, of like with expertise and everything else. The value was there. Everybody like, okay, that makes sense, like to make this, the platform for the whole organization, making sure that there's no like copying data between the projects. If you want to do like one dashboard, you need to move data across, and this is crazy. Yeah, like how was not exactly clear, but that was the determination of like, okay, I'm happy to figure this out. I mean, I want to learn, I want to test it out, I want to grow, right? So I mean, I think that was extremely important, like that curiosity to start with.
When it arrived to the decisions making, did you have a clear person to make the decision? Was it the consultant or was it the actual team?
Yeah, in this case, I was making most of the architectural decisions, but at the same time, I mean, I always relied on the team. I also didn't really maybe know that much in detail. I mean, some of the investigation they were running into, right? But let's say I can say, well, I mean, that makes sense to implement that particular, let's say, tool. Can we test this out, right? Can we run some proof of concept? Can we understand like what works, what's not? And bit by bit, we started kind of showing, let's say, those kind of components into the data platform, started like with some vendor, provided platforms, whatever, and then shifted to something else. But it was always like, can you do this analysis and test it out if that really works? And then effectively we would discuss with the team pros and cons, right? But the decision will be effectively on me, let's say, to say, okay, like this, I think this is something we need to work on, which is also okay if this is not correct after some time, right? You also have to accept, maybe it was not the best decision or doesn't fit like after whatever, couple of more months. I mean, sometimes it's not as structural, right? But it's okay. You have to test it out. I mean, you have to be able to see what works, what's not.
Don't fall in love with technology, fall in love with solutions that solving your problems, of the customer problems, to be precise. Thank you very much for this overview. Let me present to you then my thinking here. What I tried to create was basically some kind of a flow that goes from the resources, the concerns a little bit, then ideas and constraints and quick wins. One of the things that I put as the main thing that we need to create in here is alignment engineers around the user stories and not the tools. So one of the things that I had as experience was two different teams were working on on the same more or less solutions. One of the teams decided that they want to go with CI/CD from day one, meaning they wanted to develop all the process, but they were not connected to the user. So whenever they worked on the solution, this is something that I see quite often happening actually with different teams. They were executing something that took them around 8 months to 1 year to actually deliver. And then by the time that they finished, which was a perfect architecture, it was a properly working and automated and all the process that they like to have for a robust system, the user didn't understand the value of it. That's A. And B, they just thought it's an overkill for what they needed. So I think that this is one of the cases that I then realized you need to have a little bit more user stories, a little bit more understanding about what are we actually trying to solve rather than, this is a great technology, let's just go ahead. And I had a second team that were running and they were creating a lot of tools, but at the same time, none of them was proper tool. So they were all MVPs. They just released them to the environment as soon as possible, and they just forgot about them and they left them in the environment. And this was another thing that was creating quite a lot of friction in the organization, because of that, because they said like the tools are not reliable. I need to invest quite a lot of time to debug them, to fix them, and so on and so on. So this is like two edges of the issue. And then one of the things that also did with them was a lot of working about the user stories, how we actually structure it in the right way. What are the users actually expecting us, or what are they suffering from? So you understand also how your tools are reacting and working. And then basically from the concerns that I had, I was thinking about, like, at least in my case, when we had this fight about the CI/CD, yes, no, there was a split in the team because some of them wanted to go this way, some of them didn't want to go this way. And it's created a big fraction that was actually causing people to leave because they were not satisfied. And I think that this is something that we always need to keep in mind while we're making decisions. We need to make sure that we're keeping the team also together, so it's not splitting, it's not turning into a problem in the long term for us, as well as not over engineering. So as I said before, like you can always over engineer. Is it actually going to solve the problem? Not necessarily. We don't know. All the time we don't have the feedback, and the team is not aware of what the cost of enacting. So this is, again, I think also from how we describe the problem as an academic problem, they don't understand that there is actually money behind it. There is a loss of money each day that the system is not up, so the platform is not there.
Yes.
We are leaking money, and I think this is something that needs to be a little bit more articulate for them. And I was thinking, I didn't write it because I think it's too radical, but to place somewhere a dashboard that counts every few hours.
How much burning.
Exactly. How much it's actually costing us for not coming with a solution.
And you can absolutely calculate that. I mean, like, you don't even need some fancy software, but like it's also offering, right, all of the geo-reconnection, time tracking, whatever. You can definitely put the value on this.
You can, and it's gonna be painful to show it.
Yeah.
And basically try to actually visualize it a little bit better. In the idea area, I was like, we need to force a decision. At the end of the day, we cannot keep debating, right? If we continue debating on what is right and what is wrong, this is a debating team. This is not an organization. We are here for working, doing more time boxes. So very similar to as you mentioned before. So we time boxing it. We're making sure that there is a decision at the end of it, and allowed basically this short and long-term discussions. How do we do it in the short term? How do we do it with the long? But time box it and then make a decision. You don't need to drag it. And also when we're talking about trying to move forward, I was thinking about like, okay, we need to do something that is short-term, like 4 to 6 weeks. What are we doing to forcing people to think inside time boxes as well? So while we time boxing the decision, we also timing box what we do, or what is the scope, what we can achieve actually in a certain time frame. And the last ticket that I had was define who decides, giving the power for somebody in the meeting to not only be a participant, but also make the final decision. I'm convinced that this is the right approach for us. And I think that this is also something that is very helpful in such meetings, especially when there is a lot of voices or only two voices that dragging into two different directions, that there is a one person that can make this decision, and you define it at the beginning of the meeting and everybody sign on it. So everybody agree on it. And I think that one of the constraints that they have is keeping the trust upwards and downwards, right? So the engineers need to have the trust that they're going in the right direction. The CEO needs to know that they know where they're going. And I think that here, this is what I started thinking about. Okay, so what are we doing actually? And it's starting in a very simple roadmap. So we're defining the roadmap, where we're going, what is our direction. And this is how we can keep a little bit more trust, because we're communicating it to the CEO. This is what we're planning to do. Something is happening, something is moving. And also the team have the security that they made a decision. It wasn't made for them. And I think this was one of the easy things to do. Then another easy solution, while you're working on the platform, think about like simple, Excel to visualization. I wrote it here as an example. What can you do as a super simple thing, right? Because when I started, for example, at Zalando, we didn't have Tableau back then. And we had MicroStrategy, which took a very long time to develop because we needed the consultant. Yeah. We needed a lot of layers of building these cubes. And I'm sure you know about it as well, because you also adapted Tableau later on as well.
Yeah.
And the idea was, let's just take an Excel sheet. We produce it with a little Python if needed, or just as a CSV, and we process it in the visualization tool. And this is a really quick and easy solution, but it gives you already feedback because you know what people are looking at. It's like, no, this KPI doesn't make sense to me. So why do I include it inside my final solution? And this is the kind of thinking we need to do. Okay, what can we do really quick as an Excel to visualization? Simple, straightforward. And then from the architectural wise, I tried, so usually when I'm trying to visualize a little bit my way of thinking and what I was having in mind, I'm not sure it's working well in here, but what I try to say is like we split it into two horizons basically. So the first one is the MVP quick testing. So this Excel to visualization thinking method, which always feedback into the CI/CD design. So whatever we find, we proof it, we manage to understand it's working or not. We think about what is the MVP that we're doing, what will be the CI/CD approach of it. Then we get the results. We basically, we do the testing, we're getting the learnings, and these learnings basically being applied into the CI/CD process. The flow is not good. Forgive me about that. I just realizing it after I finished it. But
And
the
then it's
idea
a
is basically
blueprint.
there is always these loops that going around, and then at the end of it, we arrive into some defining long-term system because we learned. So we have the information that we are missing, and this is where we need to arrive to. And then we can actually apply CI/CD processes. We can apply a more robust and stable system. And I think that one thing that I forgot to add in the point here that I should actually add it was we also need to make sure that there is communication. So whenever we're having or launching an MVP, we need to communicate this is not a stable system. It will break. It will not work well. And we also need to try and think about basically the more simple testings for us to communicate to our users. Whenever we're approaching it, we're not breaking also the trust, because I think this is a very delicate spot where they are right now. And I think this is one of the things that they need to make sure that they're maintaining this trust and this transparency across the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, all points are great as well. If I can also a couple of thoughts on some of the solutions, I really like that the customer-centric, software development, and I completely agree with that we need to validate ideas early. We don't have really to build like shiny things, right? But we need to get the feedback first, and there's always some feedback that you can source, right? I think this is extremely vital that engineers generally also think about customer-centric software development. And like this is something that you have to really test them for. I mean, kind of like one of the growth levers, one of the competency really in the career framework. One thing also you mentioned was as an example, some teams were developing MVP solutions and products, and they didn't really went into the production, and they were not maintained. I think another important competency or a trait in the team you need to nurture is ownership. Is also making sure that that somebody really owns. I mean, if the test is, this test is to the end. I mean, like they really maintain the solution. I mean, if it doesn't really work, I mean, they take it away, right? But this is the whole quality level standards that are set up, and there's also, right, I mean, I'm kind of like owning this until the end. I really give my opinion like as the result of this like testing, and I wrap up, right? This is like a wrapping up. I think all of those are excellent points.
Yeah, I think that our approaches, both of them are very people oriented, very centered about how you moving forward and how you're keeping things centered. And the more I'm thinking about this type of problem, I think that into my entire career, I always faced it. The decision between the quick solution to the more long-term. And the truth is that when you're looking at long-term solution that do not bring the user to the center, then you're losing the touch, because at some point you just breaching and start building the most stable system. But at the end of the day, you were running and the user did not ask for it. This is not what they expected to receive. And I think this is also a very high cost if you're calculating how much time you invested in it. So
yes.
Until you arrive to decision, then the construction. And I think that this is a very important part to talk about the monetary value at the end of the day as well.
And I think you have to look back really, like that's what you said, right? You look back into like, okay, do we deliver actually what we intended to, right? Like, you look back at that sheet that you wrote, like that customer problem, and you're like, every week you're like, okay, are we closer actually, like with whatever things we're delivering, are we solving this particular problem? Because like, like we as engineers or as analysts can get like, lost in those like shiny things. We're like, okay, this is cool. I really want to test it out, right? And then you go with that. But at the same time, you need really to reflect back, and the power of reflection, I think, is really important here as well.
Yeah, exactly. We have both approaches for this, which are very similar. And what I will love to do next is to move into the key insight and actions. I will give you a few minutes. You can pick the tickets, fill out what are your insights that you're taking away from here, and then we can discuss them. For me, the insights, I think that focus on the easy solution that can be implemented easily. I think this is one of the key insights to take out of here. It's not always to look at the most complicated, but to find what is easy to solve right now. So you can already show some impact. The user-centric approach. So really to try to figure out what is the problem and keep the solution around it as a insight that is important always, I think. And one of the points that you mentioned about the executive decision that needs to be made, I think this is super important part. If we don't define or we don't have who is making these decisions or somebody who make the decision either way, and we go along with it, we can stay in this debate space quite a long time. So this is from my insight perspective. Would you like to give your insights into the matter?
Yes, I think totally also agree on, let's say, decision paralysis, right? This is the point when has to be taken and has to involve the team and people have to be on board, which means somebody who's not on board should not be on board, basically, right? But you need to make sure that, you can work with individuals to trust in that decision and that vision. And this is how you build a strong, healthy team afterwards. The same thing for the MVP thinking, right? I think like delivering value gradually with the customer feedback is extremely vital, and showing this one example of a data product. This is how we can sort of get out of those after the decision is made, right? The paralysis state. And one thing we discussed as well, that the cost of development is not intrinsic. I mean, engineers don't often, understand. I mean, as managers, you often need to kind of understand, right, the cutting costs, or you need to understand sort of how much this really would value you, right? So I think we need to put the money on the value that you're building, at least from the cost perspective, but also from the value, right? This is extremely important because it's not inherent, I think, in some of those discussions.
Totally agree. And then on action side, what I wrote on my side, the hackathon approach, I really liked it because it's really bringing everybody into the table. Okay, you have now one day to sit down and write something and showcase it. And it's forcing some kind of a thinking and also maybe somebody admitting it's not possible what they hoping to do. And I think that this is an important action that I would take in the next 90 days. If possible, just set some hackathon, give them the time to sit down and write it, present their solutions, and then figure out how you're moving forward and how you're developing it. And then the second part is on my action list for the next 90 days is to make this monetary value. So to create some system that explains what is the value of what I'm delivering and what is the cost of what I'm delivering and what is the cost of not doing it. So it's just all the time that they are inside these loops, they're going to be limited and it's going to be a big issue for them. And they can see it visibly all the time as a KPI, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Not to add much to this, maybe one thing, right, on decision, like if this is like harder, right, my suggestion is like involve a third party potentially to kind of get that, external validation of the things, or like some, committee of experts. It's like from your internal board who can actually move with that, but somebody has to take it. And then I really liked, your ideas with hackathon or something, right? If like you can put this in perspective, you can put it in practical implementation. I mean, this is easier to do pros and cons. And then absolutely the same thing with the data product, or like a value, right? That has to be delivered on a short basis.
The hackathon was your idea and I really liked it and I just steal it.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I forgot it was already my idea. Yeah, because we do sometimes hackathons like on 2 days kind of things. But it's really hard to like drive for more innovation. People sometimes really in the mode of like delivering and focusing on things they want to do. I mean, which is also a challenge, right? Like, but I think it gives us some fresh perspective as well too.
Yeah. And in your sense, so let me go back to the clarity statement that we had, how to showcase the value of the data team. Do you feel that by this we managed to arrive to a breakthrough?
I think with it, with the information we had, some assumptions we had to take, right? We don't really know all of the context. That is clear. But I mean, it seems like you can get out of those like paralysis, right? There's multiple ways you can try to achieve that, in my opinion.
I think that when I'm looking at it, we did manage to get some breakthroughs. We have action points that we managed to arrive to, and basically this is what you can do in the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days and try to apply them. And I think this is a quite interesting problem because it seems like a technical, but it's not a technical at all. It's a very much focused on the people and also how you delivering the value, which I think is sometimes something that we cannot easily see. And we are not in the academic that you just write a research and then you ship it and you are done with it. Rather, people will need to use it here. I think this is the most important insight to take out of it.
Yeah. I think after all, we have to run a business, right? And like it's often not, it's about practical implementation. It's about delivering value quickly because business is impatient And we need to take this into account, and everybody wants to move with the higher speed, and that's the reality we are in, right? If you're not able to show this value quickly in whatever data, software engineering, whatnot, I mean, you're losing a lot on competitiveness edge, on insights and everything else that you could deliver value to your customers, and this is important for people to actually understand as being part of that business.
Yeah. So as a last point here, if we need to pick 3 insights, which one will be your insights to pick?
One of 3, right? I think, maybe more the gradual one, the MVP sort of approach. I mean, the idea is not new, right? But it definitely has to be utilized within software development cycle and the data development cycle as such, right? Because you can't really predict everything that you might need at a certain point, and that's why it's easier to kind of start building things gradually and showing value gradually as well.
If you don't mind, I will pick the cost of development, which I think is very important one as well as an insight to take out of this episode. And the third one, would you like to pick it?
And the third insight, we have some nice things there. I think, customer-centric relates to MVP as well, thinking and solutions. I think it's executive decision that's to be made.
Yeah, cool. And then from action perspective, if you needed now to apply 3 things in the next 90 days, what will it be?
I think in my opinion, right, how kind of come to this decision, like together, or like, executive style, right? I think democracy doesn't work often in the settings. I mean, you can't really get all of the like democratic decision, right? Somebody needs to make a decision. That's it. So it's really more on like, make a decision, make a plan. I really like that you mentioned like this roadmap sort of thinking, right? With like, what kind of value we deliver 30, 60, 90 days. Because business grows impatient and you need to show them the progress. If you see if they see that something is being worked behind the scenes, right? There are some deliverables. I mean, there's something attainable for them to ask you like in 30 days, right? Which is really good to work with as the starting point.
And can we put the hackathon as the last point? Will you agree?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah. It could really work out if you want to bring, together people, with those opinions. It could be hackathon, it could be a simple like this architectural, decision review, whatever. But hackathon, I mean, everybody loves to, do a bit of like problem solving and such. I think it's a good way to test.
Bring some pizza and drinks.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the important part.
Yeah, because otherwise people would not come out, I think.
Any follow-up topics or open questions that we have out of this episode?
Well, I think, we worked with the context we were given, right? We didn't really know the relationship between, people, individual and biases and whatnot. I think this is really important to figure out. I mean, like, but effectively that is on a person who sort of like poses this question, right? How functional is the team, right? What's the level of their expertise as well to build something more maturely from the start? I think that's something that I'll be asking because again, not everybody at the same level often, really need to kind of work their way through to solving some of those like challenging problems. Let's say if you want to have state-of-the-art like data platform as an example. Yeah, and of course, I really love this problem because it's more about people, and people often have biases. People often are reserved, have their own opinions, right? And working with that, I think this is the challenge of a data leader, and this is like an interesting challenge to work with because it's less about software. It's more about people who build that software and how do you interact with them and how do you get them on board and how you get them believing in your vision and sort of, like working towards that vision. This is one of the most important pieces.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree on it. I really enjoyed this episode. I hope that the PO who sent it will comment. He can learn a little bit more. It will be super awesome to hear from them. If you have problems, feel free to send them. There's going to be a link in the end of this episode. And I hope you enjoyed this one. Arthur, thank you very much for joining. It was an awesome experience. We spent a lot of time here, and I think we managed to bring something interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here.
I'm really happy to you joined, and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.